Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Heart Space podcast. My name is Leila Dylla. Today's session is a live Q&A session that I offer inside of the Heart Space Women's Community. So once a month, I do a sacred guidance Q&A session for the women that are inside, and I answer any questions that they have in regards to life, spirituality, practices, really anything. So it's kind of a candid session. You might hear some other voices other than mine. I do gather the questions throughout the month and then just try to answer about 4 or 5 in the session for about 60 minutes. And then there's an opportunity for anybody to ask any live questions as well. If you're interested in becoming a member of the Heart Space community, please visit leiladylla.com/the-heart-space. Hope you enjoy. So for this evening, our first question, fear versus intuition and knowing where they speak within us. And this, she framed it interesting. Jen, I actually think this was your question. Fear versus intuition, or that we talked about this on a call, and knowing where they speak from. And I believe we were talking about the body. Is that right? Since you're on here? Okay, cool. Fear versus intuition. I lived a lot of my life thinking that I heard my intuition in my mind. And I have come in recent years to totally negate that I actually hear it completely inside of my body. And to me, the difference between an intuitive hit or fear kind of taking me and running is that the intuition really is heard from my neck down. It's usually the thing I hear first, and there's usually not a story in my mind that is wrapped around it. I usually can tell that it's fear coming in when there's a banter happening, like, well, and then this, and then that, and then over there, and then this. And I'm like, oh, I've moved up out of my body where my wisdom is coming from. And I've moved up into logic or reason or coming up with excuses or letting worry or fear come in. So a practice for that is, one, just being present enough to tell the difference between the subtlety of the wisdom your body is giving you. If I'm not present and I'm not in my body, that's pretty easy to miss. And the mind is loud. So we're always hearing the mind, and the mind could sometimes maybe be truthful or intuitive, but mostly the mind is screaming when it's full of fear or worry or trying to keep us from danger or perceived danger or actual danger. Or it's not wanting to change its patterns, and it has like the monkey mind effect. As soon as that starts happening and I'm having to tell a lot of stories about what's going on, I usually know I've moved up and out of intuition. Another thing about intuition is usually it's the quieter, more annoying voice that we're hearing. It's like the thing that we keep not listening to. It's the subtle nudge that just keeps not stopping, and we really just don't want to hear it over and over again. It usually is asking us to take a path of faith versus a path of fear, which usually means that the way that our 3D life is going, or the way that our life has been set up, or the whole life we've set up for ourselves, will then have to dismantle in some way, which is usually why we don't listen to it, because we're getting some sort of internal guidance that requires a lot of faith and therefore change. And we're like, there's no way I can do that. So then we side with fear of like, I'll just stay inside of this monotony anyway, or there's be too many things to unravel, or there's no way. And then that story comes in, and I know I've lifted up out of my body. So key points would be staying in the body, that the intuition actually comes from the neck down. It's subtle. It's usually very direct. There's not a big story around it. And it usually does require faith to listen to. It's usually the thing we're pretending to not hear, versus fear is usually a thing that we are hearing all the time. And it's almost paralyzing or confusing us. Usually is annoying us as well, but it's louder and it's from the neck up usually. Does that feel good? Practices for strengthening that would be not waiting until, like, I always say, like, don't wait till you're walking down the aisle to finally listen to your intuition. Like, practice it in the small shit. Like, when you wake up, before you make coffee or tea, check in with your body and see which one it wants. And then side with it. It's like, ooh, great. I did a push up with the intuition muscle. And then, like, when you go to put your clothes on, like, intuitively, these are simple things, but you are getting an impression in your body of which would feel the most empowering or the most like you in that day. And then, when you're going to drive to work, like, which route feels like your body is leaning towards it? Which one is feeling like an open yes? Follow that. So you're training your body and your mind to work in a congruent manner to side with that intuitive, like, gut inkling that you're feeling inside of you in small, tiny things throughout the day, not waiting until some gigantic decision to listen to a tiny whisper. Because every time you listen to the tiny whispers, it gets a tiny bit louder, tiny bit louder, tiny bit louder, till it is a pretty prominent force inside of you. You can feel a total yes in your body, or you can feel a total no. But we have to practice it just like anything else. So practicing it in smaller, seemingly unimportant times helps you understand what it feels like to get a yes or a no in a very important time. Don't do no intuition push-ups until you get to a big decision. Otherwise, we won't be able to tell. So small things is huge. And do that, like, with your practices every day too. Like, what would feel best this morning? Meditation, or a walk, or journaling, or dance, or this or that, and really listen to, like, what's true in the moment, and then completely side with yourself, like, own whatever decision you made as well, and see how it felt to go with that yes. Like, did that work? Do my cells feel happy? Like, am I thriving in this moment? Great, I made a good choice. And then if not, we choose again and come right back into alignment. When we side with the intuition, or we really follow it, it should feel like clarity in the body. It should feel like spaciousness in the body, and it should feel like silence in the body once we've made the choice. When we go against it, it feels the opposite. It feels like closure. It feels like splitting. It feels like chatter, or more talk, like more disruption, versus siding with it feels like peace. Like, and that was it. Going with fear usually feels like, oh God, and there's more disruption happening. And we can feel it even in those small things of, like, oh, like, I ate the thing that actually caused more chaos versus caused more peace. Okay, next time I know. And then I go with it. So practice it in the small ones. Okay, next one. How do I fit the work of spirit into my life? Calling in a partner into my life, managing a busy work life, child, working out, animals. So how do I fit in the work of spirit into my life? Well, there's no better time than now, would be my answer. And I would say that finding spirit or God or consciousness in the details of life are more important than dedicating 3 hours in the morning with complete silence to it. Being able to cultivate consciousness and awareness in the tiny moments of life is more important than carving out a shitload. It's great if you can. I can go off to a 3-week retreat and totally rejuvenate myself. But the reality is, you're always living a bunch of tiny little moments in your life. So to be able to incorporate a state of awareness, consciousness, and, like, deep connection, even in the tiny things, are probably going to give you more benefit down the line. Great if you can carve away 5 minutes in the morning for silence. And I think that that's a choice that we do, like, whether that's I wake up 5 minutes earlier before my kids, or I take 5 minutes standing by the dog food bag before I put the food in the bowl, breathing, because I'm going to, like, whatever, or like 5 minutes before I brush my teeth with my hand on my heart, like, line it up with something that you're already doing repetitively in your life, to stand with your feet on the ground, hand on your heart, and breathe, and really invoke a sense of devotion to the present moment, whether that's in silence, or then, preparing lunch for your kid, or driving to school, or in your workout. Like, you can incorporate the awareness and consciousness into everything, which is a choice. And then I would say find small little pockets of time, like 5 minutes with your hand on your heart, a minute and a half with your hand on your heart, feeling your feet on the earth, breathing in spaciousness, really feeling like your whole being is in one place in time, just like kind of calling your spirit back at the beginning of the day, I would say is crucial. And any amount of time that you can do for that, I think would be important, because that then sets the tone for your ability to stay present in every moment, whether you're talking to your kid or feeding your dogs or working out or working or, you know, driving in traffic. Like, we bring our whole selves to every situation if we choose. So I would say starting off in the beginning of the day with any amount of time is going to be a choice, and it's essential, whether it's 90 seconds or 30 minutes. That's great. And then bring that same potency that you found in that moment into every single thing that you do. I was this spring, I was in the Bahamas and I led a couple back-to-back retreats, and it was truly just like a really back-to-back experience. And it was beautiful in so many ways. And there was like a moment when I realized, like, oh, I don't think I'm going to have like 1 second alone. And there was a moment where I was like, oh no, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. And then I was like, yes, yes, I can. I can make every single one of my steps on the ground like the most grounding thing I've ever taken. And I can make every sip of water the most nourishing sip of water I've ever had. And I can eat my food slowly and just let it nourish I can make every breath like really potent. And I was also in the Bahamas, which is like my favorite place ever. And all those things just seemed like very easy at the time. But I remember thinking, like, I just need to do that all the time. And there's something that's lost in the fast-paced way that we live. And the fact that like the feminine isn't totally revered yet, it's on its way, but the feminine is like that nourishing part of life. And it is actually always coming towards us. And we do have an opportunity to receive nourishment and connection and love and great spirit and deep, like surrender to life. Always, like every single breath I'm receiving in like the ultimate intelligence through my lungs. I can think about how many times I breathe a day. Like if I just thought every breath was like a moment with God, like, wow. And it actually is, but I'm usually my mind somewhere else. Right. And like every bite of food can be extremely grounding and healing and nourishing if I chew it and I appreciate it and I'm grateful. And every sip of water can be, and every conversation can be. And every time I touch my own skin can be, every time my feet hit the ground, it can be. That affected me deeply. I think it's because it was such a intense situation where it was like, well, there's no way out. Got to figure out how to like make everything really connecting. And I've taken that with me, and it really, really, really helps. So then the flip side of that is also, that is one way of living. And then also carve out a tiny bit of time for silence or something in the morning. Doesn't matter how much time it is. Because then I was doing that and I was like, I don't ever need to meditate again. I'm constantly present. And it's like, okay, that's also not the way to do it. It's like, that's what you do always. And having a devotional section of your day is extremely important. Like I have my altar space here, and every morning I light my candle at it, and like I turn on the water kettle to boil, and like you get my dog's food out, and then I sit there. Even if maybe some other things are started, I still, light my incense, really connect in, and like really demonstrate in the beginning of the day what's important to me, because we demonstrate to the universe or to God or whatever what's important to us by the way we spend our time. Our time is our most precious asset. I don't have any money to donate to God. Like I got time. That's the only thing. So if I don't give any amount of time to that, I feel like I'm not demonstrating what truly my values are. And so even if it's just 90 seconds, but if it can be longer, amazing. But every day consistently really show up in that way. And then depending on how old people's kids are, you can incorporate them in. You can be creative about it. It's just like we choose what's important or where our devotion is every day. I'm good. Okay, cool. Oh, what do my daily practices look like? So I wake up and I light my candles at my Altar. I think having altar space in our home is really important. I don't have a TV. I know I'm like too ADD for TV. Um, Especially after recently watching a series on Netflix and can't get it out of my head. I really know why I don't watch TV. But it's interesting to me that this television has become like our centerpiece of people's homes, where like people just come and sit and zone out. When I feel like, again, like demonstrating what's important to us, like sacred our sacred life or our devotional life or our like values or our non-negotiables should be at the center of our living space so that we remember. Super easy to forget what's important. So having an altar space, I think, is very important. It's important for me. So every morning I wake up and I'm like excited to light the candle and like sit there, and I have my meditation cushion. So my daily practices look like drinking a cup of hot water with some lemon or green mandarin essential oil in it before I have coffee or cacao, because I love coffee and cacao. So I have my water first so that I get enough water. And then light my candles. I have these really good incense I like that I found in upstate New York a couple years ago. The smells found me, and then I like tracked the house to find them, and they're the only ones I use. I'll post them in the heart space if you guys want to use them. They're so good. And I sit down to meditate, and that I was telling my Wildly Woman group looks a little funny since I came back from Peru. I do this weird hunched over thing. I literally sit like this. Those of you that can't see me, but I literally like bend over, and I like usually have my hand on my heart in the beginning. I sat in some ceremonies in Peru this summer, and that was the shape I was in for a couple of them. And when I go into that shape, I feel like I can tap into this like very vast place inside of me. I don't sit like that the whole time. It's not super comfortable, but I can sit for quite a while actually. And I'm usually like, okay, I should probably like not sit like that for 15, 20 minutes. So I go in like that. I usually will have my hand on my heart or my low belly, or like this in my lap or something like that. That feels like really connecting to bring the two sides together, and my hands just down. We're not more spiritual if we're uncomfortable when we're meditating. So I sit on like a tall blanket with my knees a little bit lower. So I actually like sitting like that. You can also just sit on something or lay down. Like you don't have to be like in a like prestigious position in order to be effectively, obviously, since I bend over like that, it really doesn't matter what you sit like. But I meditate for probably kind of depends on the day, to be honest. Like if I don't have calls right away, I would love to sit there for more like 20, 30 or 30 minutes or more without moving. I would say on the minimum, I sit for like 7 minutes like that. And I'm usually just breathing, feeling my connection to the earth, feeling my connection to heaven, feeling what's true inside my heart, and then avoiding any like mental chatter. I just come back to my breath and feel deeply connected to the part of me that's connected to all life. So just connecting in with the eternal spark inside of me that's beyond my stories, beyond my to-do list, that's not stress, that's like peaceful regardless of the shit show that's happening around me. And then also at that point, I'm also taking inventory of like what's true. Like, is that easy today, or does shit feel like it sucks today? Because I am responsible for noticing what's happening before my day begins. And if I don't have that moment in silence, I'm always grateful that I take that moment in silence, because then I'm aware of like, today feels a bit easier. Fantastic. So like, great. Or like, I've got a lot going on today. Like I need maybe to sit here a little bit longer. I need to do some journaling, or like I maybe need to reach out to somebody, or like have some extra support. And I feel like we are all equally responsible for doing that personal check-in before we just like slam out into public of like, someone else handle my problems. I didn't check in, but who knows whether it's mine or yours or us, or it's like, man, there's so many times where I'm like, wow, good thing I sat here and like handled this a little bit before I jumped into who knows what else. So to me, it's like an inventory time. It's a connection time. And then since doing more of the feminine work, I have an embodiment practice of some kind during the day. And that's usually inspired by whatever came up inside of just sitting silently, whether it was like there's annoyance inside of my body, or there's passion inside of my body, or there's like so much creativity going on that I just need to like move quickly and disperse it, or there's deep grief happening. And I don't really even put a story to it. Like I don't have to be like, where'd that come from? I'm just like, this is present. And I usually just put on a song on my computer or phone. I have a good amount of playlists that anyone can follow just on my name that have kind of like titles to them that sometimes are relevant. Sometimes I'm like, I don't know if that really goes with it, but I feel like it does. And I'll move to a song or two or three, depending on, again, my day. And I, if you haven't read The Wild Woman's Way, she does something called non-linear movement method in there. So initially I had kind of started that practice when I first read her book, which is just moving what you're feeling. It's not a technical dance practice. You're not trying to look good. You're literally just moving in whatever way your body actually needs to. And I never know what that's going to look like, but it feels very relieving for the nervous system. And to me, I see that as becoming kind of expanding and learning to trust my emotional range as a feminine essenced being. So if I'm feeling grief, I allow myself to feel grief completely, knowing that I'm not going to get stuck in it forever. I'm just moving it through my body. And then usually it washes through, and then boom, I move into another one, and I allow myself to feel that completely without resistance. I kind of feel it as when I feel it completely, it's teaching my body something. It's teaching my cells something. It's like teaching my spirit, my actual physical body, my energetic body. It's teaching me how to open around grief or around anger, around lust, or around excitement, and not feel like it's too much. So that practice, and emotionally lasts like 90 seconds in the body anyway. But for some reason, every time we think they're going to take us the fuck down, but they don't. They just move through us and teach us something about who we are, what our authentic experience is. So highly recommend that. And usually after that, I like sit in a child's pose or cry a little bit or just like hug myself until I'm ready to like shake it off and get up. Oh, one thing I always do, and I forgot this for my practice, before I get out of bed in the morning, I roll over into child's pose. So like I wake up and I'm like, I don't want to get up. And then I roll over into child's pose and I'm like, okay, thank you. I appreciate waking up. My teacher that I went to India with, Raghunath, was that mine? What the heck? He always does this. He said he rolls over and does child's pose and puts his hands like up and then just says like, thank you, for waking up, and please make me like a conduit of your love. Put me to work today. Like, let me be of service to those that I meet. I love doing that. It also feels great on your back before you get out of bed. And it's like it cuts the like, I'm upset, I'm awake feeling like right out. You're like, oh yes, reverence. Thank you. So I love doing that. I have done that every day since India when I went in 2018, and I love it. So I highly recommend that. And if you forget, just like go back in the bed and do it. And be like, thank you. I'm so happy I woke up. Make me a conduit of your love. I love you. Thank you. Thank you. And then I usually make some sort of drink, which does feel ritualistic to me, whether I'm making my cacao or I have an espresso machine that I like. And usually that drink is like my breakfast also. I don't usually eat until later in the day because I'm not really hungry. Sometimes I make it like a bulletproof drink, bulletproof coffee, or I'll bulletproof my cacao with like MCT oil and sometimes collagen protein. And I'm really not hungry after that. And then I sit down to either write or maybe pull some cards or get into work. Kind of depends on when my calls start during that day. Then other practices I do through the day. It's what I talked about earlier, like actually feeling my life every moment and just not letting my mind carry me off to different time zones is a constant practice. Carolyn Mace is really like direct about releasing the past and the future and just living in congruency, like just living in the here and now. So I think that is probably the thing that I practice the most, of just like letting go of other realities and just not living in fantasy, not trying to project too much into the future, not trying to carry the past, just absorbing the moment as it is, taking things for face value, feeling my breath inside my body, feeling my feet against the earth, being present with whoever I'm present with, whether that's my dog or the person I'm on a coaching call with, or the email I'm writing, or like just doing one thing at a time. That feels like the most consistent practice that I do. I read a little bit every day. My reading chair here in the back. I usually light a candle and pray in the evening. Since the world has been more wacky, although I believe it's always been wacky, it's just more heightened. I like to imagine, usually my evening prayers, I'm like praying for the whole earth. So like imagine the earth like as a globe in front of me, and I'll like hold my hands and just like try to allow my energetics to influence the energy of the whole planet, like believing that we all can rise together and that love is the only truth, and that the earth can heal itself, and that we can heal each other, and that, like we can do this, and like letting myself become the kind of person that would need to participate in that. So I try to do that every day. Usually I'm weeping when I do that also, because I'm like, yes, the world is wonderful. People are wonderful. We can do this. I pray before I eat. Also, that's a daily thing. I usually just breathe and like bring myself to be present and really feel like my nervous system calming down, especially my gut. Because if we're disrupted and stressed out, we can't digest our food anyway. So I really try to take a couple really deep breaths, which is pretty difficult in the beginning. I had some disordered eating patterns when I was younger, and like what I realized is that I never thought I was going to have enough. So there was always a little bit of anxiety before I would start to eat. So even just taking a couple breaths felt like I couldn't do it beforehand. It was like, I can't get through 3 before I have to get this food. I'm like, the food's not going to get up and walk away. So just like relax. So that was super helpful to just learn how to calm down before eating. And I usually just hold my hands like over the plate and just ask for the food to enter my body at a high vibration, healing my cells, opening my heart, helping me process whatever it is that I learned that day, whatever, add in any special prayer there. That feels very reverent. That's something I always do. And I always take a shower, take a bath, or some sort of water element in my day. I really want to live back near the ocean, because if I did, I would jump in the ocean every day. Water is a universal solvent. So even just washing my hands feels like a spiritual practice of like releasing energy that's not mine, or my old energy that I don't need anymore. And I think the same thing when I'm in the shower, in the bath, like let this purify me, clear me off. I have a therapist. I think having people like a coach, I have a coach and a therapist and sacred connections that I can connect into, that I know have my best interests in mind, that can help me see things more clearly. I think that's really important for everybody. And I usually take a walk every day with my dog without my phone, usually barefoot, which is another reason why I need to live at the beach, because it's getting cold where I live right now. I'm like, I need to be barefoot. And so time in nature also would be something. Like I am usually sitting outside. I really don't enjoy being inside very much. If I could just only sleep inside and live the rest of my day outside, that would be how I would do it. Because to me, it's so easy to connect back to life when I'm outside. It's like there's constant motion and awareness, and leaves rustling and breeze going by, and like I can feel the earth coming up. It's like, man, it's so much easier to remember who I am out there. So if you don't get enough time outside, I would absolutely have that as a sacred practice. During the summer, actually, sometimes I'll trade out my morning meditation and just sit outside, just sit on the chair with like the sun on my face. If I could sit and watch the sunrise every day, that would absolutely be where I was for that meditation. I use my essential oils a lot also. I have a little book that goes with like the emotions too. So I will like rub my hands and feet before I go to bed with a certain oil and coconut oil. I incorporate those into my, like the supplements I take every day. I take little oils to like help balance hormones. I take supplements. I eat well. I see all of those things as like spiritual practices, because like my spirit lives inside my body. So if I'm not taking care of my body, then my spirit's going to feel diminished also. I think like not having too much time on our phone is really important. Setting healthy boundaries with that is super important. I don't sleep with my phone in the bedroom, and it goes on airplane at a certain amount of time. Doesn't go off airplane until I think it's like 9 a.m. or something like that. So even if I'm playing music for my embodiment in the morning, I'll do it on my computer. Just because and I also keep my phone on silent always, just because the buzz, the constant, like someone's trying to get you, like you need to do something right now. That is, I feel like, very disrupting for nervous system. So if having that off and away, I think is super important too for energy. I think that's it. Let's see. Last one. Guidance for when you have a guilt consciousness for no good reason. It leads to affecting thought, leading to overwhelm, doing something wrong. Guidance for when you have guilt consciousness for no reason. Guilt consciousness for no reason. Immediately I'm like, well, were you raised in a religious structure that might have shoved that down your throat? Yeah, guilt consciousness. So guilt is that we feel we've done something wrong. Shame is, I believe I am wrong, not that I've done something wrong. That's a good way to answer this. Well, I think I would have answered this differently at one point, but a lot of my work now is with women specifically and around kind of reclaiming the pieces of ourselves that we have previously thought were bad or that we're doing something bad. And in that, including a daily practice or a moment by moment practice of radical self-approval, I think would be like the opposite of feeling guilty or holding guilt consciousness, is that all that I am is totally fine. And where did I learn that what I was doing was wrong or bad or deemed as unworthy or not pious? It's like, where did that originate? So specifically for this, I would say working on a practice of self-acceptance, self-love, and like radical self-approval overall is helpful. Like maybe do a huge brain dump journaling around like, where did that I'm doing something wrong come from? Did you have moments in your childhood where you were told that what you were doing was wrong or bad or deemed as anything, I guess, too much, too little, not enough? Where did that originate? And if you follow the thread back, usually we can find like an original incident that happened, when you're 4, when you're 13 or something, and you were told what you were doing was not good. And therefore, like, we close down that part of ourself. And any piece of ourself in our past that we've shut down or deemed as not good, and we haven't integrated that piece back, it's in the corner screaming for our attention. So healing and like becoming whole requires us to actually go back and notice all the little places that we've disregarded ourselves or rejected ourselves or abandoned ourselves, which is usually all the ways that other people have disregarded us or abandoned or rejected us. And sadly, we're just continuing to do it to ourselves. So my guidance here is to journal about when that guilt consciousness comes up and see if you can track it back to a past situation where someone rejected or someone revoked love because of something you did, and really hone in on that experience and see if there's a way that you can heal it. Like, can you sit with your younger self who's 13, who got rejected for something that they did? And can you sit with them, have a conversation with them, give them what they need, and incorporate them back into your life and start to honor them more so that it has a place at the table, so to speak. And then I would say the radical self-approval as like a daily practice is literally just that. It's a practice. It's not something that like we don't just choose once to be like, all right, I accept and love all of myself and then never have to do that again. We have to do that all the time. Like all the time. Take a step to the left, do it. Take a step to the right, do it. Meet someone, do it. Right? Do it, like constantly. And every time we do that, it does become more normal, more normal, more normal until we're not consciously choosing it all the time. Every once in a while, we might push up against an edge and be like, oh yes, this is where I have to approve of myself, love myself, give myself permission. Got it. And it's literally like training a muscle. I'm trying to think of like another journaling prompt here to like just explore guilt in general. Guilt is also the shadow side of our second chakra, our sacral chakra, which has to do with our sexuality, our sensuality, our emotion. It, forms in our very younger years as soon as we become able to like get up and walk away from our mom and we separate, or our parents, and we separate and start to explore our desires. Usually desire has a lot to do with guilt. We think like we're a little baby and we walk up and we're like, I remember I touched an iron when I was little and like with my stomach, I like burnt myself on the stomach. And when we're little, we're literally just going after like something shiny. Like we don't know it's wrong. And then we get hurt and like, oh my God, or we are told do wrong. And then we like clam up and close down because all we were doing was following our desire. And then we learned that that was the wrong thing to do, or we got hurt, or someone else shamed us for it or guilted us. Right. So what happens usually as adult is we feel guilt around a lot of our desires, literally like, or our pleasure, right? Like the fact that guilty pleasure are two words that go together is just like not right at all. Pleasure is pleasure, and guilt is literally a shadow side of, or like a trauma around following pleasure or desire. So specifically as women, but as everyone, I would say, look at where you're guilting yourself simply because you have a desire or you are seeking pleasure. And how can you start to take those two things that do not live together and separate them and be like, I'm allowed to seek pleasure and have desire for this and this and this and this. And I would write yourself a fat ass permission slip, like permission to enjoy the hell out of that cookie, permission to go on a long walk, or to take a bath, or to take 5 minutes in the morning, or permission to be super horny right now, or permit like whatever it is, or to be opinionated. And then guilt is over here, resolving guilt from our childhood or guilt from something where we actually did have bad behavior or we really did inflict pain on someone else. Totally separate thing. They don't belong together at all. And oftentimes they are weaved together in our life to where we're feeling guilt for no fucking reason. So permission to feel pleasure and desire, keep them separate from guilt. And then with guilt, I would track back to the situations in your life from 0 until now that you have felt like what you did was bad. And I would ask, like, did someone else tell you that? Or did you actually feel it? And what do you need to do with the younger version of yourself to heal that wound? Like literally, if it's a 3-year-old you, like bring her in front of you and have a conversation. Like, what do you need? What's wrong? How can I love and support you? Listen to her and then start doing that thing every day. If it's like, I need you to love me, or like, I need you to spend time with me. Great. Spend time with yourself every day for the rest of your life and heal the little girl in you. Every time you do it, you'll be healing her, right? Or if she's 18 and she needs, someone to cheer her on or to like be her support system, great. You probably still need you to be your own support system. So there's all these little needs that could be healed in present time. It just takes us reflecting and finding silence, actually using your imagination and your intuition to lead back to the places where you felt guilt or been guilted, and then really taking time to reflect by journaling about like what were those situations, and then act upon what you heard. Right. So it's one thing to like get information from a younger version that says like, I need your time and attention, but then You have to actually give yourself the time and attention to heal the wound, is to give what you didn't receive when you were younger. Does that feel like that answered that question? I'm not totally sure what they wanted with it, but guilt is guilt and shame. Woo, those are thick ones. And the more you, since pleasure and desire are such a important piece of living our fullest life, permission to live those things will also start healing guilt, like inadvertently. So I would kind of work on both sides, like permission to feel those and follow those and approve of those desires, approve of those cravings, approve of those. Trust yourself to be a desirous, pleasurable, like pleasure seeking person. And like, do not let guilt slip in. And if it does, just like notice and then walk it back out to the door. Like, we don't live in the same house, and to trust yourself in that. I think the feminine also has just been, I'm going to speak as the feminine in myself. We have learned and been conditioned to not trust ourselves in pleasure, with desires, with craving, lust, creativity. Like, all of those have almost been deemed as like too much or scary. It's like, because it's power to be connected to deep pleasure and creativity like that, and emotion like that. It's so powerful. So we've almost scared ourselves of living there, or like bringing that through our life. So guilt has been like the shadow that's come on top of that and been like, don't bring that out. And it's like, they don't exist in the same place. So working with both of them, healing the guilt and enhancing the pleasure, and letting them come to a healthy place. I think it is important also to, like, guilt is like it can be a really motivating or clarifying emotion to feel when we need to pull ourselves back into check, to be able to trust ourselves in something, to know that we're not just going to like spew all over everyone and never feel bad about it. Like, I think guilt is healthy in some sense, to where we know, like, got it, that behavior wasn't ideal for the situation. I'm sorry. I need to like check where my boundaries were. I think that's also important too. We're not just allowed to do whatever the fuck we want. It doesn't matter how other people feel. That's also not an integrity. So I think there is a healthy aspect to it, to like, just like fear, like, if we had no fear, like we were just running out in the middle of traffic, like, it is healthy. It's not healthy when it's covering our fullness of life. So we just need to make sure that we keep it in a place where it actually helps us be better people, not dampens us. Yeah. Let me see if I have any other. That's all I have for today. Was that helpful? Do anyone that's here have a question that I can answer in 5 minutes? Good. Thank you so much for being here and listening to this. I hope that this was useful. I love doing this. This is fun for me. I hope it was fun for you. Yeah, submit your questions for next time, or send them to me or to Ray, or ask them in person, and I'll note them down so everyone can hear. I don't know when our next call is, but it's all good. I'll look on the events. I love you. Thanks for being here. See you soon. This is Leila Dylla, and I want to thank you for listening to this episode of the Heart Space podcast. If you enjoyed, please like, share, and give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. Please visit leiladylla.com to check out the courses, retreats, or other deep dives that I have coming up. And remember, if you are a woman looking for a place to learn, expand, and awaken to your highest potential, I'd absolutely love to have you as a part of my women's community, the Heart Space. Offering yoga classes every month, meditations, breathwork, wisdom workshops, sacred ritual, and all things feminine healing. I would love to have you as a part of our tribe. If you're interested in this, please visit leiladylla.com/the-heart-space. Sending you massive love and gratitude. Catch you on the flip side. Namaste.